Right. Thank you for joining us today. Configuring CiviCRM Entity with Drupal 10.
Umbrella. Can you so no is the answer. Okay. And that company has to be regulated.
If everybody could mute their audio, I'm getting background noise from people. All right. Right on. So we're doing configuring CiviCRM Entity in Drupal 10 or 11. And this is so we're going to be showing in Drupal 11.2 with CiviCRM 6.4. And if you need a starting point to be able to get the code base for this, you can go to this link, clone the repo, run composer install, and you'll have Drupal 11, CiviCRM 6.4, and a bunch of Drupal integration modules to get you started, set up properly. We also have a composer plugin to manage CiviCRM extensions, which is there. You can go to this link and read more about that. So the project page for CiviCRM Entity is here at this link. This is where an issue queue is. And if you have issues or requests that you can go here and make an issue in the queue. Development happens on a GitHub repo, which is then copied into the repo for Drupal. So if you want to contribute code, make PRs against this repo right here. There's a few other modules that you're going to see utilized in this presentation. So a mapping tool for views, a views field, and FYI, C tools will be illustrated for a small thing. So it is a handy project to have. So I'm not going to follow along with all the slides, but I'll go basic in this order as I screen share. So I'm just showing I'm on 11.2. And this is a fairly blank installation. Has some modules that we commonly use, but it is a very fresh copy of Drupal 11 with CiviCRM Entity 4.0.0 installed. So what you see here, I've configured a little in advance, but mostly it is blank. So when you first install CiviCRM Entity, you will have a page under Structure, CiviCRM Entity, and Settings, and that is this page. And I wanted to make a video and a training just explaining what is going on here. So when you first come here, you'll see like this enabled entity types and everything is unchecked. So it's not enabled in this sense, but that enabled may be slightly confusing because every entity type that CiviCRM Entity supports is integrated into Drupal automatically upon installation of the module. So enabled means more things are enabled, right? And to illustrate this, I can add a new Drupal view. And you'll see that all the CiviCRM, so the entities are there. And you're able to create views of all these of the data of all these different entity types without enabling the on this setting page. So I recommend that you don't enable them unless you specifically need to. And that's what we're going to talk about is kind of like when would you need to, and what do you get when you do that. So out of the box also, before something is enabled, you can see that I did set up and I did enable the contact entity type on this demo. And I've enabled these view pages. But without that, you still have views and you can still reference contacts with an entity reference field. So I have an article, content types, stock, what you get out of Drupal. And I've created an entity reference field referencing contacts and was able to reference that here. So there is one difference from what you're seeing. So right here is a link to a contact. So I'm displaying the value of that reference field. And by default, it's just a link to the entity. And if you do not have the contact type enabled, in particular the view page, then this will not be a link. It will just list the display name of that contact. So because I have enabled CiviCRM contacts here, and I've checked this view page box, then that on that page, that reference, whoops, where am I going? Lost it. Then this is a link right here. I don't want to disable it right now, but I can. Now, other modules. So now that you've installed the module, you have all these entity types. These are Drupal and any constraint modules that may take advantage of different entity types will generally work. Rules would work. Search API is a very common one. Other modules that manipulate any entity type would work out of the box too, so that the enabling is a very specific action what happens here. So when I enable this, I have the option to enable view pages. So view, these mean just pages that view the contact data. So here I have an example of a CiviCRM contact rendered as a Drupal page. And I have modified this from stock so that I've made these field groups. I've added a map to the contact's primary address. But that's part of what we're going to go in how to do this. And then I'm going to go into some other things. But the thing to know here is that once you enable these, you do have these pages open. So if a user has permissions, the right permissions to view these, then you could, in theory, open up your entire CiviCRM contact database to the public world without them needing access to go into the CiviCRM admin side. So that's like the important thing to know is like, what are you, when you enable these things, what are you opening up here, right? So there are permissions that govern who can access these pages. I'm an administrator. I have the necessary permissions to view these things, but you want to be very careful when you enable these that you are limiting them to only those user roles that can see them. And in this session, we're going to talk about a little bit. And in the next session, we're going to go into detail how you can control who can see these, what user roles, or even doing very custom access control for these. Because there's maybe you want to publicly have pages where you design the rendering or design the page. Maybe you only want organizations contacts to be visible to the public, but then you don't want individuals and so on. But it's the same thing with any of these other entity types. If you don't want to reveal addresses, activities, all of this stuff, don't enable them. Or if you do enable them, know that you need to think about the access control and permissions. Now, it is possible to view what are these permissions that govern this. They are in code in the repo, so that's a little challenging. I do have the link on one of the slides for this, and I'm just going to show this. Now, these can be modified through a custom module, and it's not hard to do, but you need to know about it and know the little technique. I'm not going to go into the code of how to alter these permissions and or how to do more complex access control scenarios, but I do want to say, so you can look in this file and say like, okay, CiviCRM contact, that's the contact entity, and then these view pages. So the user needs to have a role that has the view all contacts permission granted to view those pages. And you can look for any of the entity types for any of the operations and know. So to do Drupal-based edit forms, you need edit all contacts. And if there is no permission listed here, then you need administer CiviCRM. So a lot of these will just have nothing. And like here, these then you need administer CiviCRM to get in there and edit those. You can see that it is possible to need multiple permissions to be able to do a certain thing. So for contribution recurring records, to delete one through the Drupal user interface, you need actually 3 permissions to do that. So purpose of this is be very mindful. So like if there is a way, like this has evolved, the versions have evolved, and you may have installed CiviCRM Entity 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and maybe all these are enabled. And if you want to just quickly turn them off, there is this disable Drupal pages. So if I check this, this will automatically deny access to all these pages and to the edit form. So if you see here, I have view, but then I can edit, then this actually will allow a person to edit the contact through like a Drupal UI. And there is a delete link. It doesn't render, but if you go to delete, then you could delete this contact. But I don't want to delete this contact. So, and you can just easily turn those off with one switch that is right here. So that is that. So when do you want to enable one of these entity types? And obviously, if you want a view page, if you want to be able to publicly show different entities, and this is, when do you want to do that? If you want it to be in the Drupal theme, if you want it to be presented nicely, what Drupal does really well is allow you to render and theme content. So it has all the tools needed to make a nice presentation of that data. So if you want to do that, and we often do this with events. So maybe an event is more of a public type of data, and maybe you're advertising that you have these events and you want to really have the event information shown in a very public, pretty way. And I'm going to show you an example of one of our clients that has done this. And so this is their front page. This is a county government, and they have upcoming classes and events, and those events are in CiviCRM, and they do use CiviCRM's event registration, but they wanted a way to have a kind of pretty presentation of those events that match their theme and to do different things. And they also have the ability to like add slideshows and different things with those. And so they have the nice presence. So if you edit an event in CiviCRM, it will be reflected here on these Drupal pages, and you can have that. So, and again, there's no jarring experience. It looks just like every other content page on the site. There's another client here that wanted organization contacts publicly available. So anybody, even anonymous, can view their contacts. And then they wanted many other things. So they wanted views, listing of related contacts, and custom fields listed, all matching their theme. So this is a great way to do that. And you can see this URL up here with that. So when you enable these, then you get more settings. So you can see I've got CiviCRM contact enabled. So I have a CRM contact page. Just go here, you see a listing of contacts, but then you can do things like you can add Drupal fields. And Drupal has a bunch of different field types. It's really good at like managing media. And it also has various tools like this view field here to be able to add a view as a field, so that when you view the contacts, you can see that view. So in this case, I had a map view, and I want to put that on the contact page. And so this could be a view of anything, and maybe you want to add addresses. Maybe you want to be particular about what addresses show, and you can add that, and we'll just go through that real quick, how to do that with this module. Let's say that I wanted to add an address, add addresses to this contact. So I can make a view. Maybe I call it contact primary address. I'm going to select the addresses. I don't really need to make a page or a block in this because I'm going to use it in the context of this views field that's going to display on the contact page. So I don't need to wrap it around any kind of display mechanism other than this. I need a contextual filter. because I need to filter by the contact ID, because I only want to show that address for that one contact. I'm going to hide the view otherwise. So then we're going to add a couple fields. Maybe we want the street address. Maybe we want, let's add that. Maybe we don't need this address name. And now I can see test here, I have this is ID 77, so I can see that my contextual filter works. And now I've got that, and I'm gonna actually add relationship to the state. And I'm gonna add, and the reason I'm doing this is, string here. So if I do not enable the state and the country entity type here, that means I can't render the entity like through the Drupal entity rendering mechanism. So I need to get directly at the data in the table. And so I need to do it this way. So I'm going to, now I want to add the state, and then I can, so I may want the abbreviation or the state name, or, and I can choose, because I added that relationship to the state, now I can select which field of the state entity I want, and I can add that. So now the state's coming through to do the same thing for my country name. Got that. Maybe I want the zip. Leave it out right now. Okay, so I don't think we need a pager. We're only, that's good. Let's add the filter for the primary address. Is primary. So now it's going, if the contact has multiple addresses, it won't show all of them. It'll just show that primary address. Don't really need a pager. It's set to 10 items. I'm only going to have one because you can only have one primary address in CiviCRM. So it doesn't really matter. You can just remove, or that could be removed. So I've saved my view, contact primary address. Now I want to be able to display this view on every contact. Now, there's many ways that you can do this in Drupal. You can use Layout Builder, or you can use views field, and there's other ways. You can make a view block. There's a block field. Pick and choose many different ways of doing things. I'm just showing this as one way. That's cool. So I'm going to add a new field, view field. And in the settings here, I choose the view that I just made, which display types I want, but I'm going to set a default value. And because this field, you could actually edit the contact and choose which view you want to show, but I don't want to do that. I just want it to always be default. And then I need to provide that contextual filter for the contact ID, so I can provide that as an argument. Provide the contacts. And I'm going to look at the CiviCRM contact, and I can find the ID. I can put that token there. And I think, and then I want to say always use the default value, because I don't really need to allow an editor to edit the contact and select the view. I'm just always going to use it. It's just one way to do this. Available running, but I need to get it on my display. So I've already kind of preset a display for the CiviCRM contact. I added some field groups, tabs, and I had set that up, but now you can see here I had my map. So this would show, but I want to put that in my field group. So I'm going to add a tab address. Defaults are fine. So that field group show at the bottom. I'm gonna bring that up. Set that, and I'm gonna miss this and that. And I'm gonna save. So now when I go over here, I should get my address tab. And there's that. So you can see where this is actually the field name, and I could remove that. So it's just an example of how we can make custom displays fairly easily. I didn't want the label. Say back to here. And that field label is now gone. So now that, I mean, this isn't necessarily pretty. You may want to do different things, but you can get at and fairly easily configure the display of that contact. And all these things that I'm showing is true for any of the entity types here. So if you want cases or contributions, activities, groups. I mean, there's lots of different ways. We've seen it with groups, and people want to like have a listing of contacts in the groups. You can start to do that in this way. Same way by combining views with the view modes and displays. That is that. So, okay, that is customizing the view. Okay. Talk about access control. So the other big topic on the settings page. So this text format here is it's really only used if you're editing via a Drupal form and then having a field that is a long text field. So like maybe event description is an example where in Drupal, the field type long text has two components. It has the actual HTML that you enter, but it also has the text format of how that HTML is interpreted by Drupal. And in CiviCRM, there is no mechanism to where you're setting a text format. So we just provide this setting as a default. And so that way it'll use that format when you save, and in the CK editor will be, you can set up in Drupal different configurations of CK editor per text format. And in this way you can select that, what that is. Many people may want to use full HTML, right? Because if you want to have HTML, this can be set per field, but you need just a little bit of custom code to do that at this time. So pre-post hooks. This has been around, and if you're not using a fairly recent version of CiviCRM Entity, you don't see this, or you can disable them per entity type. In the past, some time ago, we did this disable pre-post hooks just globally for all entity types. So what's going on here? Pre and post hooks. Every time a CiviCRM record is either added, updated, deleted, it fires off what are called hooks, and that is basically CiviCRM saying, "Hey, every module, would you like to do some action now that this event has happened?" So when that updating of a contact, that's an event that happens. Would you like to react to that event? Would you like to take some additional action that wasn't at core when that happens? And so that is the standard in CiviCRM. It's been that way a while. And the CiviCRM Entity module implements those hooks to be able to provide some features. And what it really does also is it triggers Drupal-based entity hooks. So there's actually a different system. Drupal has its own system of notifications when events happens, and there are certain things that happen via the Drupal hooks in core that you may want to have happen on the CiviCRM on the when that CiviCRM data is happening. So we built that in. So one example is rules. So maybe you're configuring a rule, and whenever a contact is updated, you want to display a message to a user, you want to email an admin, or do some action. Well, that for the rules module to get the message that that contact was updated, you need the pre and post text. So it's all good. All right. So now we found out that um, this action, the way that it needed to be done was not very performant. So it doesn't, for just editing one contact, it doesn't make a huge difference. But when it matters is if you're doing a batch process and maybe you're updating thousands of contacts, or maybe you're creating thousands of activities. We found it in doing big migrations. So this is actually what inspired us to have this disable feature, was big migrations, and it really cut the speed of the migration in half when we disabled it. So there were times we didn't need it. We didn't need a rule of fire. We didn't need any of the other things to happen. So we was like, okay, disable it. So you too, if you don't need them to be enabled, you can just go ahead and disable them. So if you're building a site and just using a little bit of views, then you don't really need it. You could disable it. You can get a little performance boost, and especially if you're doing large batch processes. You may want these though, because like I said, if you're going to have a Drupal rule, you need them. Then maybe you don't want to disable them globally. Maybe you want to disable all of them except for the contacts. And then you can go through. So this was recently added in the past year. And so you can configure these to disable these for all the entity types that that you don't need that Drupal side of event notification to happen. You know, the rule I like is that if you need rules, don't disable them. If you're using Search API for an entity, don't disable them. That's because you may want Drupal to know that an entity's changed, so you can re-index in your search index that entity. ECA is another module that's like rules. It's kind of maybe the replacement of rules. I like to, if you're going to add Drupal fields. So on this contact, you saw me add a Drupal field that was a view reference field, basically. And if you add other fields, and there could be cases where you want to have pre and post text to like invalidate caches so that you're always showing the most recent data. So maybe you have caching. So you update a contact, but then you want your contact, the data to the public presentation to change. So then you want Drupal to get the message that that contact was updated, if then you want your pre and post hooks. So in my case, I don't really need them for anything other than contacts. And I was going to show you something with layout builder and events. So I'm gonna leave event done. I don't really need to click all these for this presentation, so it doesn't matter. So that's an explanation of pre and post hooks. Now, if you have a small site, 10,000 contacts, generally it's fine. This is normally appears as a performance problem in larger sites, larger situations, or if you have a ton of modules installed, a ton of things going on that are like looking at and responding to these messages, and then maybe you don't need it. So if you don't have them disabled right now, wouldn't worry. You can just get yourself a little bit of a performance boost out of it. If you're unsure, it's okay to leave them enabled. If you haven't noticed a problem, you don't have a problem. So you will know. Okay, that's the settings page. So 30 minutes in, this is good. All right. Now I thought I'd just show a little bit of building something with layout builder in events, as this is probably the most common way to do it. And I only need view pages for events. So I'm just gonna enable it, but I'm just gonna only check the view because I don't even want to worry about the permissions of the add and edit forms. Nobody needs to be editing those on the Drupal side. So I'm gonna just enable those, save. And I had created an event in my instance to be CiviCRM Entity training. I see the ID is 3. So I can go to CiviCRM. So it's kind of like, oh man, there's a lot of stuff here. So there's um it's not necessarily pretty to start with. This is the raw data of the and you may want to modify this and make it look pretty. So now that I've enabled it and I've got these pages, I'm not going to add a views field. I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to go to manage display. Gonna see if I can get rid of a bunch of these. There's usually more fields than you need. So, you all, for the purposes of illustration, the reason I'm doing this is because when I enable layout builder, it by default will put on the layout all the fields that are enabled. So I need to disable it either way. So I'm just going through it, disabling some or most. Uh, So just to save my configuration. And then I'm going to enable layout builder. One cool thing about this is you can make layouts per event. So if you wanted to have a different layout, if you wanted to have different blocks, show different fields on each individual event, you can do that, and it works good. I'm going to just show, so otherwise, if you just do use layout builder, then you're configuring layout for all events. So now I've done that. And you can see it has all these fields and it does put some defaults on here. And maybe I don't like this for some reason. Maybe I wanted to do it a different way. And one other way I want to show you is manage display. So you can be right at the default, you have just a default view mode, but you can add additional view modes. You may want to render different fields of the event in um, different places. Maybe you have a view and you just want to show event title and event summary. Maybe you have different scenarios. Maybe you're referencing events with an entity reference field and you want a third view mode. So you can set these up. So when you install Drupal, you get this, you get view modes. I can add a view mode. I can go here, say, For events, you can choose if this is for all event types or just particular ones. I want it for all. So now I've created that. And you see it here. And now when I refresh the page on my manage display, I have this custom display settings that I can then enable that view mode. And now it has here. So now it copied what with the fields from layout. So if I want a different setup, maybe I only want the dates. Those, I go back to my default and I'm gonna manage the layout. And maybe I want to remove the dates. We do use a couple of other modules called Bootstrap Layout Builder that kind of makes these pop-ups, makes it nice. So I recommend that too. Okay, so now this is great. But I want to, what do I want to do? Save layout. You know what? I'm like, I don't like this. I'm just going to delete this section. What if I wanted a two-column section? Yeah, maybe I want, then you can choose all the different fields on the event. And maybe I want the event summary. And maybe over here, I want to use my dates that I added to that view mode so I can use my chaos tools. Everybody's got to have chaos tools, right? I can choose my view mode. And maybe I don't want to display the title. And then I can save my layout. Now this page is different. You can see I've kind of, now I'm starting to build what I want the presentation to look like. And I thought I'd go through real quick and just show you how to put the map. So do this through views. CiviCRM event. I need a block. Layout builder needs blocks. So I'm just going to use default settings for right now. So we just don't need but one. And and I want to show fields. First thing I need is my contextual filter. This time is the event ID. Hide the view if it's not given. And I'm going to I need to do something different. So if it's in layout builder, I'm going to provide a default value. And I'm going to take the content ID from URL. I want so I'm trying to show a map. So I need to relate to the address. And events have what's called a location block. So I'm going to add a relationship to the location block. From the address, from the location block, I can get at the address. Okay. Then here I can filter and I can get my longitude. Oops. Up the scale, latitudes matter, but up to 6 digits, right? So then that module, CiviCRM entity leaflet, it requires the leaflet Drupal module. And then so I can choose format, go up here, Choose that. And I need to set which field, where does it get the latitude and where does it get the longitude? And then it's nice to have a little bit of tooltip. So maybe we have that. Maybe I want to set the initial zoom in. Do that. And I should be able to show a map. That's good. That worked. So I knew that event ID was 3. I was just testing it. That's great. So here, then I want to manage the layout. So I've added that views block to my layout. Save that. And it didn't work. You're wrong. Change that to raw value from the URL path component 2. I'll explain that in a second. And save. Now my map shows up. So I needed to set, it's just like get the ID of the event from the URL. And that came from that 3, so that displays a map. So it's, quick, but you can see that in, just 10 minutes, you can start to build something interesting. And if you put a few days into it, you can really make some pretty stuff quickly. And there's much you can do here without needing any code. So that's pretty cool. And that's basically what I wanted to say today. So I appreciate that. I think we do have a little time for questions. All right. One thing that may be good to do tier 2 is maybe we don't like this. Maybe we want a different URL here. Right? So I didn't put this in the slide, but there's something called Path Auto in Drupal, which lets you generate URL aliases. And we can go to URL aliases. Is that not a name? This is the deal with the live demo. Something I have to do. Well, we're not doing that. Okie doke. Well, I appreciate everybody coming.
And I just popped the link to the next training, and there's one question that just popped in chat. Mark, if you want to take a look.
Does the CiviCRM fully replace the Views CiviCRM and Webform CiviCRM modules? So so it definitely is, I wouldn't say that there's 2 questions. So Views CiviCRM in Drupal 7, core itself provided views integration, and CiviCRM Entity just augmented it. They took all that out and didn't develop it in core for Drupal 8 and above. So then to have views integration at all, you need CiviCRM Entity. And as for webform CiviCRM, definitely not. I mean, I think that the use case for webform CiviCRM is quite different. And what's great about Webform CiviCRM is like able to take payments, so you can set up forms and take payments, do membership renewals. So I don't look at it all as like a competitor or a replacement. It just provides different functionality. Most of the time, CiviCRM Entity is going to be, views for reports and other things, or if you just want to engage in other, it's like the conduit or the plug where you can plug in other Drupal modules to take advantage of that. Um, okay, so we have a question. How how to tackle different fields per roles, Civi groups? What are you using for access control? So what do you mean by different fields per roles, like Civi group? Like, would you like you maybe you mean like who can access the pages, depending on a more granular level? Can I display some field for one group of contacts versus the other one? Sure. Um, I think there's several ways to go about that. When you do access control, you can do it by view mode too. So let's see if we can do. Mm, There is a way to do this. I have to think that we need to know, like I was thinking like maybe for a particular view mode, you would have access control for that particular view mode. You can do for the fields per roles, you can do different access control for the view itself if you're putting that on there. And now that you've asked that question, I'll find out and put it in the next presentation on how to do that too. For a field, like I think if you mean like one of these fields, how could you have these fields show only for users of a certain one or that's in a group? And I will answer that question in the next section and give you an example. I think it can be done. We have a question. There were a couple of entities that CiviCRM Entity didn't seem to support that I hacked. And you can add entity types or remove them actually via custom module. And that's something that we're gonna go into the next session. And file entities, I haven't done a lot with file entities and CiviCRM entities, so I can tell you that it hasn't gotten a lot of attention. We have done things where we've used them in views and um, just got the ID of the file and then generated the link for that. So like doing the rewrite field um, for which link. Is there any I mean, as far as is there any effort, we kind of work on uh things that we need for client sites, things that they request, and then we do things that we just think are good, and some of that just has to do with what comes to our attention. I can tell you that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So think about that. there's so many options, so many things you can do. It's sometimes I think, okay, what should I show? And guys, if you go back to this, I'm also Jack Hannah and chat.civicrm.org. I pay attention to the Drupal and CiviCRM Entity channels, or just anybody ping me. So that's definitely a place I'm happy to chat and talk and think about what your use cases are and what you're working on, and to just work on things. And if CiviCRM Entity doesn't quite do something and you want it to do and you're working on it, then we can talk about it, and we can even see how we can update it and get it in CiviCRM Entity so we can get it in the market. So hit me up there. I love just thinking about the problems and things that can be done and working on puzzles. All right. Well, thanks everybody. See you next month for a more programmatic session where we're showing code examples of how to do various things, including access control, but also touch on theming. And I may look at some of these issues here that were brought up in the chat. Thanks again.